A Navy submersible's eerie encounter with a prehistoric-looking creature, rogue waves that appear out of nowhere and disappear just as fast, and the Massachusetts sea serpent. Was it a real-life monster, or just a case of mass hysteria? These are disturbing things seen in the ocean that remain unexplained. From a massive undersea volcano that went unnoticed until it shook the world, to a bizarre quacking sound no one could explain for decades, and the Dragon's Triangle, a patch of ocean so infamous for vanishings that even the Japanese government warns about it. These are disturbing things seen in the ocean that remain unexplained. In July of 1965, Captain Marvin McCamus and Captain Bill Rainey, both Navy officers, were aboard the deep-sea submersible Alvin, conducting a routine check on the Artemis listening array in the Bahamas tongue of the ocean. They were already about 1,500 meters, about 5,000 feet underwater, when they descended another 300 feet to follow a cable that spanned a crevice. While McCamus was focusing on the cable, he noticed something unusual moving around them. At first he thought the sub was drifting along the cable, but then he realized that the object was moving on its own. McCamus would later describe what he saw, saying, "I was astonished to see a thick body with flippers, a long neck, a snake-like head with two eyes looking right at us. It looked like a big lizard with flippers and had two sets of them." He went on to describe watching as the creature swam upwards, but before they could get the cameras in position, the animal disappeared from their view. Completely shaken, they returned to the surface, but when they reported the sighting, they were understandably met with criticism. McCamus logged the event in the wet log, but he believed the Navy deleted it before it made it to the final log. McCamus, with over 300 dives under his belt, was adamant that he had never seen anything like this before. The creature McCamus described seemed eerily similar to a plesiosaur, an extinct sea creature that the Loch Ness Monster is often described looking like. Rogue waves are one of the ocean's most terrifying mysteries, and they seem to just appear out of nowhere. These massive walls of water can be twice the size of any wave around them, sometimes reaching over 100 feet tall. And unlike tsunamis, which we can usually trace back to earthquakes, rogue waves just show up unexpectedly, making them even more unsettling. For a long time, scientists weren't even sure if they were real or just myths invented to explain these sudden disappearances of ships. But in 1995, one of these waves was actually recorded for the first time, and suddenly rogue waves went from folklore to reality. Now researchers are trying to figure out exactly what causes them and how they get so huge. What's wild is that no one really knows how these waves can grow to such extreme heights. As Ton van den Bremer, a fluid mechanics expert, points out, studying rogue waves isn't just about figuring out why these waves are so freakishly big, it could also teach us more about the physics behind all types of waves in the ocean. In the late summer of 1817, the coast of Massachusetts was suddenly visited by a very strange creature. Fishermen off the coast, and at first they thought it might just be a prank, but as more and more people saw it, the creature started to gain traction. It was described as a huge serpentine creature, its head and body rising about 8 feet out of the water, with a head as large as a horse's. The body itself was about 3 feet in diameter and stretched an estimated 50 feet long. Oddly, it didn't sliver through the water. People described it moving vertically, almost like a whale or dolphin breaching the surface. At first, people thought it was probably just a hoax, but when the creature swam closer to land, things started to feel a lot less like fiction. More and more witnesses started reporting sightings. "Oh my god, there's a sea monster that keeps showing up. Well, I think it's a hoax. No, I saw it. It's definitely real." Well, during this frenzied wave of sightings, one person, eager to prove the creature was real, fired at it with a musket. Fortunately, muskets weren't really known for being the most reliable weapons, and it didn't hit. Today, some people look back on this incident and dismiss the sightings as nothing more than mass hysteria. One theory is also that the serpent might have been a group of narwhals, which from a distance could have looked like a single massive creature, but it's also entirely possible that there really was some sort of strange creature lurking up the coast, forever scared away by the blast of an unreliable 19th century firearm. The ocean's twilight zone is still one of the most mysterious and unexplored parts of the ocean. It may not be the deepest part of the ocean, but it is home to an astonishing amount of life. In 2014, scientists released a study which talked about how there might be 10 times more fish living in the twilight zone than previously thought. To put that into perspective, it could mean there are more fish in this one part of the ocean than in the entire rest of the sea. Of course, these numbers are estimates, but one thing's for sure, there are a lot of fish down there. What's even more mind-blowing is the migration that happens every single night. Fish and other creatures from the twilight zone rise to the surface of the ocean to feed before sinking back down into the depths. It's been called the greatest migration on Earth, and it's been happening for millions of years, though it wasn't really understood until the 1940s. That's when researchers working with sonar equipment originally to detect submarines kept picking up an unexpected false bottom. And what do I mean by a false bottom? Well, instead of just reflecting off the ocean floor, their sonar was detecting what almost seemed like a bottom, but it was just way too high up in the water. Well, what they were hearing was a massive layer of life in the twilight zone, all rising and falling with the rhythms of the ocean. Simon Thorold, an ecologist studying this phenomena, compares the motion to the ocean breathing, like a quote giant diaphragm, driving the very breath that the world is taking every day, end quote. But with all the life that exists deep down in this mostly unexplored part of the ocean, how many undiscovered creatures could be swimming around down there? Probably quite a lot. From Reddit user FarAd8219 comes a story about a terrifying encounter they had while scuba diving. It goes as follows. A couple years ago, a buddy of mine rented a boat out for my birthday to go out in the sea with. We started to go out off the coast of the Cape, and the water was a bit chilly. We were maybe 22 miles out from the coast while still having sight of the shore. Before I got in the water, a weird chill came down my spine. I brushed it off and put my tank on my back, followed by my goggles, and got into the water. And then I saw a pair of glistening eyes in the ocean. I thought it was a shark. I've had my fair share of training for 6 years with sharks and other deep ocean water creatures, so I thought I'd be able to handle it. It slowly started making its way toward me, and I got a better glimpse at it. It was huge. Sharks have a smooth, rubbery type of flesh. This creature had scales like a snake. This was not a shark. Red was pouring out of its mouth. It looked like it was ready for its next meal. Its teeth were poking out the side of its jaw, and it even had hard, razor-sharp fins. I attempted to hurry away, but I was in shock. I thought I would die from shock or from this thing eating me. I finally cut out of shock the moment it started to swim more swiftly, but my monofin could only go so fast in the water. My buddy was getting a little suspicious. He looked over the boat deck and he saw me attempting to swim for my life as this dark shadow was inching closer. I eventually reached the boat, and out of breath, I told him to book it. We ended up not using the boat for the rest of the day and went home. To this day, I have no idea what that thing was, but in all my years of experience, I just don't want to find out. On November 11, 2018, seismographs around the world picked up this bizarre signal coming from the Indian Ocean near the island of Mayat. It was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Low-frequency waves that lasted over 20 minutes and looked almost artificial. Even weirder though, nobody actually felt a thing. Normally earthquakes create these sharp jolts of movement, but this signal had no typical P waves or F waves, the kind that would make the ground shake. It was just there. At first, no one had a clue what had caused it. Was it some unknown geological event, a secret military test, something else entirely? Months of investigation finally led to an answer. A massive new undersea volcano had formed on the ocean floor, one of the largest discovered in modern times. It was quietly erupting 2.5 miles below the surface, producing these strange waves as it reshaped the seafloor. And here's something kinda unsettling. Scientists had no idea a volcano that big was forming until they saw the seismic data. How many other massive geological changes could be happening under the ocean completely undetected? For decades, submarines and research vessels in the Southern Ocean kept picking up something strange on their sonar, an odd repeating noise that sounded vaguely like a duck quacking. It was so consistent that researchers nicknamed it the bioduck, but no one could figure out what was making the sound or why it happened seasonally, mostly during Antarctic winters. Take a listen. At first, people thought it could be some unknown marine creature or a kind of classified military technology. Since the sound was often detected near ice shelves, some even thought shifting icebergs might be causing it. It wasn't until 2014 that scientists finally figured it out, though. Turns out the bioduck is made by Antarctic minke whales, but even though we know who is making the sound, one question still remains. Why do they do it? Minke whales are notoriously hard to study, spending most of their time in remote icy waters, so no one is sure if this noise is for communication, navigation, or something else entirely. The Dragon's Triangle, or the Devil's Sea, found off the coast of Japan. It's been notorious for centuries, with reports of ships and planes vanishing without a trace, strange lights in the sky and water, and bizarre electronic failures. Even the Japanese government officially recognizes it as a danger zone. One of the most infamous disappearances happened in 1952, when a research vessel called the Kaiomaru No. 5 was sent to study the area. It had a crew of 31 people, and none of them returned, and there was no wreckage either. So what happened? Well, given that reports of weird sightings here go back to ancient times, long before modern technology, some people wonder if something out of the ordinary happened. Some witnesses claim to have seen objects darting in and out of the water at impossible speeds in this area. Most seas on Earth are bordered by land, but the Sargasso Sea is completely different. Sitting in the middle of the North Atlantic, it's surrounded by ocean currents rather than coastlines, making it feel like a giant watery vortex. But the strange part is, despite those powerful surrounding currents, the sea itself is eerily calm. It's also filled with seaweed, which floats in massive mats across the surface, giving the whole area this haunting, lifeless appearance. Sailors have feared the Sargasso Sea for centuries, with legends of ships getting trapped in its still waters, never to return. And that's not just old superstition. Historical records show that abandoned ships have been found adrift in this area intact, but with no crew on board. Then there's the European eel mystery. These eels somehow know to migrate from European rivers all the way to the Sargasso Sea to spawn, despite never having been there before. No one fully understands why this specific patch of sea is the only place they breed. Scientists have theories involving something to do with Earth's magnetic field, but they don't really know for sure. It's just like something is pulling them there. For centuries, sailors have reported sailing through massive stretches of the ocean that glow with this eerie, milky white light. And these aren't just tiny patches of bioluminescence from plankton. These glowing waters sometimes cover thousands of square miles, visible even from space. The phenomenon known as a Milky Sea is so rare that most people assumed that it was just another sailor's tall tale. That is, until 2006, when a group of scientists finally captured satellite images proving that it was real. The leading theory is that bioluminescent bacteria are responsible, somehow coordinating on a massive scale, maintaining a steady glow for hours or even days at a time. Researchers think it might have something to do with attracting fish that eat them, but the exact reason and how such vast numbers of bacteria synchronize like this, it's still a bit of a mystery. The only thing we know for sure is that if you ever sail into one, you won't need a flashlight to see what's swimming beneath your boat. With all that said, I've been your host James, and I'll catch you, yes you specifically, in the next video.